Good morning, everybody, or whatever time of day it is where you are. It was my birthday a couple days ago, and for some reason, that felt like it would make sense to make a video about my favorite books. Feels like they go together. I cannot explain to you why, but that's what's going on. And I tried to narrow down my favorite books to 11 of them because 11 is my favorite number, and everybody does top 10s, but no one really does 11s, top 11s. Um, and it was very, very hard to put them in order, and it's not even like a definitive order, I guess. Well, I guess it is for now, but I thought about making this like a yearly thing. Maybe next year I'll um, I'll do another one of these because in my top 11 there are quite a few books that I have read last year, and probably this year I'm gonna read some books to add to that list. So let me show you through all of them in ascending order. First off, I finally finished The Brothers Karamazov, and I only put them on the bottom spot because of like recency bias, because I finished it last week, and I know it's gonna be one of my favorite books of all time. I think almost the last half. I think the at least the last 300 pages or so, I just binged. I just couldn't stop. And even when I was out, I just kept thinking about that book. The ending was so beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I don't really need to explain much, eh? I think my favorite brother, that's like a question that people get asked. What's your favorite? Which one of the three brothers is your favorite? And I think I'll have to go with Dimitri, to be honest. I also cannot really explain why, but he's so erratic and so irrational and so yeah, he's such a complex character, and I really really love how Dostoevsky writes characters, how he makes them so real, and they contradict themselves, and they do stuff that's uh, sometimes characters in books. Doesn't mean they're poorly written, but some of them are very one-sided and very focused on one aspect. And for him, I feel like they exist more on a spectrum, and they might act in a way that would not be expected of them. And I think to write something like that, it takes a master. And yeah, also like I liked his descriptions of conflicting emotions and facial expressions, and yeah, he's very good in all these subtle depictions of things. Um, and I also decided that I would like to read everything that this man has ever written, but that's more like that's more like a lifetime goal, not really like a thing to add to the bucket list. Not really something that I think is achievable, because he wrote some long ass books. This guy. I think that's all I'm gonna say about this. We're staying in Russia. The Master Margarita in this absolutely beautiful edition. This is also something that I would like to reread. Um, I guess I was a bit biased when it comes to this because I know two people who are obsessed with this book, and that kind of definitely shaped my, you know, my experience of reading it. Yeah, one guy, I think he read it three times back to back because he said it's that good. Um, and I understand it. I was reading it and I was like, oh, that's a pretty nice book. And then I saw that it was written in the 30s, and I was completely mind blown because it does not read like some. Well, it was published. Was it published in the 60s? I think it was. Um, yeah, and if you learn about the whole, well, I know it was written in the 30s, and it was banned in the Soviet Union and stuff, and yeah, it's just so crazy and so vivid. There's so many things going on. It's so fast paced. It almost reads like a fantasy novel, in my opinion. That might not be the most popular opinion, but I think this is kind of like past magical realism. Even this is going into fantasy territory, and it has those, and one aspect that I really like about Russian literature is how it can be so sad and so funny at the same time. That's well, basically, I'm not like very well read, I would say, in the Russian literature field, but all of the stuff I read some Dostoevsky, I read some Chekhov, and I read this one. They're all like really sad, but also like kind of funny. And this is also something in this book. It's so crazy. It's such a fever dream. And I would like to check out another translation because my friend said that well he hasn't even read this translation, but this is a quite recent one, and he has read an older one, and he swore that would be the best one. I would like, however, to read Goethe's Faust because it's very heavily based on that. It even has a quote from Faust in the beginning, and you know the basic structure of Faust. I think I'm familiar with, you know, with the Mephisto, with the devil, and stuff like that. But yeah, I would like to read Faust this year. That's might be in an upcoming video. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, definitely a great work of our times. Next up, we got something a little bit different. We got Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. Banana Yoshimoto was an author that I discovered quite early on in my reading journey, I guess. I mean, I've always been a reader, but when I started seriously reading, I would say, like reading a lot and really like trying to get something from literature, I would say that was about 3-4 years ago. She was one of the first authors that I really fell in love with, and not just with her, but with the whole Japanese genre of literature. I think Murakami writes quite similarly to her. And this book, I think I read at least 3 times. You can easily read it in a day. It's more like a novella, and it even has like a giant font and big margins, and it also has another story called Moonlight Shadow in it. And yeah, man, her books. I would like to read. I have read like I think like 6-7 books by her, but she wrote a couple new ones since, and I think I would like to read more from her. All of her books are about young adults, usually young women, young girls, and like her early 20s or late teens, and they're facing some sort of tragedy, and it's just kind of about how they're dealing with grief and with life and how they're getting along, and it's so incredibly comforting and so beautiful, and I'm like getting some goosebumps right now even if I think about this. Um, yeah, and how yeah, it's she kind of writes about normality, I would say, and this girl after facing incredibly tragic events moves in with her best friend. Or no, it's not even her best friend in the beginning. It's just like a guy that she knows, and they offer her to live with him and his mom, who's really his dad, but she became a trans woman, which was also this was written in the 80s, so this was definitely not a common thing back then at all. And it's yeah, she kind of dives into this world, and everything is so weird but yet so normal, and she finds comfort in the kitchen, and how yeah, spending time in the kitchen, she gets the white noise from the elevator to no, not from the elevator, from the fridge. I don't know why I said elevator, but that is something comforting to her, and yeah, an incredibly beautiful book, which also evokes so many emotions. I think there's mainly sad books, to be honest. I think all of these books are pretty sad. That's just kind of what resonates with me. Um, Next up, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This book, yeah, I think this book kind of blew me away, to be honest. This might be the great American novel that those Americans keep talking about, you know? And yeah, incredibly great storytelling, in my opinion, to address like some really serious issues like racism, and slavery, um, and that whole structural injustice and that whole structural racism from a point of view from a small girl. I think is genius, 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 genius. And it's because she doesn't understand all these constructs that people think, and she doesn't understand the concepts of race, which is not even a real thing, by the way. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's definitely something that everybody should read, I think, because it's super timeless. It's still as relevant today in the US as it was back then. Um, and yeah, I think I heard this is basically the only book that Harper Lee ever wrote. I think there was something else published, but that was just like drafts for this one or something. And I think all of her friends like gave her money so that she could take time off to write. And it's a beautiful story. And it's yeah, this book became so famous that it's kind of her legacy, and it's beautiful. I don't really like this edition that I have. This is kind of what you get with when you buy used books, But this Klett edition, I'm on the lookout for like a nice hardcover of this, but yeah, we'll see if I find something. This was my top one book of last year, but I had a really hard time. This was also quite recent that I read this, and I had a really hard time putting it on a spot in this list, and it's probably gonna change if I do this list again last year. Yeah, I talked about it at length. If you want to see that, you can check out my top books of last year video. This edition also is so beautiful. It has this nice, like, it's like almost like watercolor paper. Yeah, well, Giovanni's Room. It's about, I said this before, I think James Baldwin, to me, is one of the top three, definitely, most interesting and most influential authors of the last century. And, I'm not saying that's a fact, but that is definitely, for now, my opinion. Such a fascinating guy, so ahead of his time. Like, also, like the stuff he addressed in his works is still as relevant today as back then, and this also is quite topical still, I would say. And it's this gay love story basically, across borders and across cultures. This young American white man, who's traveling around with his fiance. His fiance has taken some time to travel alone to get some experiences before they go into marriage, and he falls in love with this Italian boy. And back then in the US it was illegal to be a homosexual, and in Europe or in Italy it wasn't, and he's so conflicted with his own emotions. He loves and he hates, and he's full of joy and full of grief, and it's such a complex book in such a short amount of pages. That's I think what fascinates me the most, how much he packs into. It's not even 150 pages. It's 149 pages this edition. How much is in there? It's absolutely incredible. And if you haven't read this, why the fuck not? This I definitely knew I needed to include. This is a journey of a book. It's my edition is about 800 pages, and it's just a book that you kind of live your life with, very similar to the Brothers Karamazov, or probably any of these like really big books. About this boy, this man who lives in an institutionalized setting. He lives kind of in a some sort of mental facility, and until very late in the book you never learn why, and he kind of reflects on his life. And he has dwarfism. He has a lot of things going on. He's like some neurodivergent coded things going on. He has this tin drum that he keeps banging on ever since he was a little child. All throughout his life, he always has a tin drum, and he always beats them up, and he always needs new ones. And he lives through wars, and he lives through, Güntergrass. He lived in an area that was back then it was Germany, and it after the war it got distributed towards Poland, and that it's about identity, it's about home, and about it's an astounding novel. It also dabbles kind of into magical realism at times, and he this is part of a trilogy actually, which I have read completely, and these books are not really connected story wise, but he kind of recurs as like a minor side character, and they're all set in the same place and at the same time, and it's very very immersive. That's what I always like, if you really feel like you live inside of a book. And I heard someone say about the brothers Karamazov that the characters feel like they're his friends, and I feel like this guy is my friend too. He's kind of an anarchist. Some people describe this as an anti Nazi novel, and I'm not sure if I agree with this. I think this is more like an anti everything, because he just kind of he's chaotic. He's like a chaotic neutral, I guess you would. That's like this alignment chart thing. He kind of does. He's selfish and he does whatever he wants, and he sabotages people, and yeah, super fascinating book that really really kind of shaped my whole perception of literature. And now we're getting into the top five, which is quite special. This I mentioned a couple of times. I actually, a couple of months ago, filmed a video just about this book, but I wasn't really happy with how it turned out, and I never posted it. And someone said in the comments I should make a video about this book, and I think I'm gonna do another one at, well, sometime in the future. But this is so so special. Ice by Anna Kavan. I think I'm kind of repeating myself. A lot of these books I've already talked about before, but I'm just gonna say it all again. This is a masterclass in writing an unreliable narrator. It's so fascinating, and it's how someone can write something like that, where you don't believe what's on the page. You're kind of doubting if what he's writing, well, what she's writing, but what the character is saying is the truth. And it's this apocalyptic world, and he kind of chases after this young girl, or this, well, I guess she's like a young woman, but he's older, and you never, it's such an ambiguity in their relationship. You never really know what's happening. It's also very fever dreamish. You never really know if she flees from him, if she flees from the impending catastrophe, the ice that is spreading everywhere and destroying everything. Sometimes you don't even know who's who. There's a character called the Warden. Sometimes they blend into each other. You don't really know who's acting, who's saying what. It's not the easiest read ever, but I constantly talk about this book, and I constantly think about this book also. And Anna Kavan, she was a very troubled individual. She was very mentally ill. She lived in psychiatric care, and one of her therapists got her hooked on drugs, and she was on heroin while she wrote this book. Like, she was actively doing heroin and writing this. And her name, Anna Kavan, is actually the name of one of the characters of her early work. So I've had trouble so far locating some other ones of her books, because she wrote a couple. But I should look again. Like, a couple of years ago, I was trying to find more of her works, and in Germany I just couldn't get them. But I'll be on the lookout again. And yeah, and also like a nice short read. You could probably read this in a day. Well, 180, maybe in 2 days. Um, Next one, another short one. Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. This, I think this is one of the most influential things on me, on my life, that I have ever read. That's why it's in the top 4 spot. This is just unlike anything else. This is just, well, it has a lot of similarities to a lot of other things, but I think Beckett's writing is so unique and so recognizable instantly. I wish I put tabs in this and I could read something to you, but yeah, the characters are so surreal and so unique. I talked about Beckett plenty of times on this channel, but yeah, it's so sublime and it's so surreal also. It's kind of, it feels like everything he says is intuitive and improvised, but at the same time also like the complete opposite. Everything has a deeper meaning and is planned out. It's really shallow and really deep and really childlike and really mature. It's, yeah, very ambiguous. And it's funny, it's sad, it's devastating. Um, and yeah, I like how he puts his plays into scene. Like, he's not pretending that the stage is anything but the stage they're on, that they're kind of existing in this space that he creates. That is not like pretending to be in a house or on a field or whatever. The setting is something that is really fascinating for me in Beckett's works. And he also said about this play that, I think someone asked him what this means, and he said he's not sure. The only thing that he knows is that the characters are all wearing bowler hats. And he also said it should be performed just on a simple stage with minimal lighting, very minimalist. And it's absolutely fascinating, and it did change my life. Top 3. The Perfume, Patrick Süskind. Probably the most immersive writing ever. Patrick Süskind, absolutely fascinating guy, very reclusive. There's like no interviews. There's nothing. He completely, very like J.D. Salinger, like he completely withdrew himself from any sort of fame or any sort of public identity. And this is the only novel that he ever wrote. I read. He didn't really write very much, and some of the stuff he wrote is also not very easy to find. But I read 2 other works of his, which I also loved. But this is definitely his magnum opus, The Perfume, which I always found it so fascinating how he can write about smell, which is like the only one of our senses that is not really transmittable in art. Like I guess the perfumes could be considered art, I guess. I would like to do, yeah, I would say perfumes are art, but I think it's a sense that's quite hard to evoke in a different medium, and he manages so perfectly. That's I always thought that so fascinating how he writes about smell, and it definitely contributes to the immersion that this book has, because you're really feeling like you're diving into that world and into this incredibly disturbed and crazy main character. I think the ending of this book is one of the craziest things that I've read in my whole life, and I want to reread it for all of my life. I just want to keep reading this book, and so should you, I think. So check it out. And I think I'm gonna show you number 2 and number 1 together, because they're so close to each other that I'm gonna explain. Obviously, we got 100 Years of Solitude by the one and only Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And on the number 1 spot, we got Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. This book also has been on the channel many times, and probably you knew that this was my number one if you've been watching this channel before. Let's talk about this first. What can I even say? This is one of the most famous books ever, that won Marquez the Nobel Prize. And yeah, this is, I think, to be honest, I think this is the best book that was ever written. You can quote me on that. And this just had like a lot of personal meaning for me in my life. But this book, it's so masterfully written. You know, the peak magical realism here, and all the characters across 7 generations that all share the same name. Jose Arcadio Buendia. That's not even right, eh? It's no, it's Aureliano and it's Jose Arcadio. Yeah, they all share the same names, and they just live in this fictional town, Macondo, which he actually came up in his first novel that he ever wrote. So that was also so fascinating to me, because I think he wrote this like 15 years after his first novel, if I'm not quite sure, but definitely a long time. And even in his first book, this concept of this town, Macondo, as a substitute for like the North or South America, the Caribbean isles and stuff, he all puts that into this town of Macondo, and all the struggles, the severe political turmoil, the civil wars, the oppression that is going on. It's all in here, and it's very heavy. I sometimes, to be honest, sometimes I can't get into Garcia Marquez because it's so heavy. It really kind of drags you down, but it's so worth it to go into that world and live. It's kind of like they're all reincarnating into each other, and even though there's so many different characters, it feels like they're all one also. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this was comprehensible, but this is just this is completely on a different level in my opinion. And also, I think I only read this twice. I want to read the English translation. I forgot the guy's name, but some guy translated it into English, and Garcia Marquez said that this translation is better than what he wrote in the original, so I would like to read that at some point, maybe this year. And then this book, the first time I read it, I must have been about, I think like 21, maybe 22, and it resonated with me so much. This copy is really beat up. I already have 2 copies, but I would like to get like a nice one. You know, I've already been reading a lot of Hesse at that point. I got into him when I was quite young, which I think is the perfect time to get into Hesse. And you know, this character, all of a sudden, like all of Hesse's other characters, they're all really sad and they all struggle, but they're usually really young, and they have this Bildungsroman trope. They go out into the world, they make their experiences, and then you have this old, bitter guy who's fed up with life, and he's suicidal, and he just does not fit into the society. Sometimes my videos just cut off, and I'm not really sure why that happens. I didn't really lose much footage at all, but it's kind of a weird thing. I'm not sure. I was talking about this. Well, you know, what I was saying is that this guy was very different to most of Hesse's characters, and there was something that really surprised me and really resonated with me at that time, and it had a very big influence on me, and it still has, to be honest. And I think I'm more and more becoming like this guy the older I get, which is probably not a good thing. And yeah, Hesse always, you know, I read his biography, and I really like tried to learn everything about him as a person that I could, because I'm you know, I was kind of a Herman Hesse fanboy for a long time, and maybe I might still be. And it's not only in this book, but also, you know, in his major works. And that it's in Narziss and Goldmund, it's in Unterm Rad, it's and a bunch of others, that all the characters are. It's kind of like they're different aspects of him, and it's like they're shining a light on all these different parts of who he is as a person, you know. Even the female character in this book, she very much feels like she's like his feminine side, and then the main character is his masculine side, and yeah, it's this whole thing, and I think that's all I'm gonna say. And it's very nice to like assemble your favorite books, and I realize that now. To see what they have done to you, and how they have changed you as a person, and how these books have shaped me. This is basically me in a nutshell. This is my personality, I would say. It's true, and it's cool to see how these books open worlds and open doors, and that's not only like within their pages, but also into the real world. Like, I have at least 2 friends who I became friends with because of this book. Or yeah, it's like you tie experiences, you tie people to these books. I used to have a roommate from Colombia who would like recite the first sentence of this like constantly, basically. And it's just amazing how literature can transcend the written page and become a part of your life, and become a shared experience. And isn't that fucking beautiful? Thank you very much for watching. I got some free time now, so I'll probably gonna do like a video that takes a bit more time to film, so stay tuned for that. That's probably gonna be online sometime next week. Thank you for watching, love y'all, and until next time.